The boy hadn't spoken in 3 days. Not to his classmates, not during group work, not even when Amara knelt beside his desk and asked him quietly if he wanted to go get water. Minyi simply shook his head and stared at the page in front of him, a page he hadn't written a single word on. Amara Diallo had been teaching for 14 months. She was 26 years old, barely older than some of her students' older siblings, and she had walked into this school in the middle of Los Angeles with a degree, a dream, and the kind of stubborn belief that every child could be reached. Most of her colleagues thought she was naive. She preferred the word determined. But Minyi was different, and not in the way that made teachers give up, in the way that made Amara stay awake at night. He was 9 years old, neat, always clean, always early. He brought his lunch in a proper container, never crumpled, always sealed. Someone at home cared deeply about the details. And yet the boy sat inside himself like a locked room, and whatever was happening behind that door was getting louder. She could see it in the way his hands trembled when the classroom phone rang, in the way he watched the school entrance every morning like he was checking for something he hoped wouldn't come. If you've ever looked at a child and known, just known, that something was wrong and that you were the only one paying attention, then you already understand why Amara did what she did next. And if you're new here, welcome to Velvet Empire. Stay with us until the very end, because this story is going to take you somewhere you did not expect. She filled out the parent contact form on a Tuesday afternoon. She wrote Minyi's name in careful letters. She noted 3 specific behavioral observations. She requested an in-person meeting, not a phone call. She wanted to look whoever was raising this child directly in the eye. She did not know that the name she had written on that form, Kang Do-hyun, made grown men cross the street. The meeting was set for Thursday, 4 o'clock. Amara rearranged her classroom during lunch. She didn't know why exactly. She just wanted it to feel less institutional. She moved the chairs so they faced each other properly. She left Minyi's most recent drawing on the desk. A house, a tree, a stick figure standing alone outside the house. Not inside. Outside, standing at the edge looking in. She was studying it when the door opened. The man who walked in did not belong in a primary school classroom. That was the first thing she noticed, not his height, not the expensive cut of his dark coat, not the stillness with which he moved. It was the simple, undeniable fact that he occupied space differently than other people, like the room adjusted to him rather than the other way around. He stopped just inside the doorway. Kang Do-hyun was 41 years old. His face was sharp and composed in the way of someone who had trained himself never to react before thinking. His eyes moved across the room in one slow sweep. The drawings on the wall, the colored alphabet border, the miniature chairs stacked in the corner, and something almost imperceptible shifted in his expression. Not softness, more like the memory of softness. He looked at Amara. She stood up from her chair, straightened her back, and extended her hand. "Mr. Kang, thank you for coming. I'm Ms. Diallo, Minyi's teacher." He shook her hand once, firm, brief, said nothing. She gestured to the chair across from her desk. He looked at it for a moment, a small plastic chair with a slightly wobbly left leg, and sat down in it with complete dignity, as though it were a throne. Amara almost smiled, almost. She sat down across from him and folded her hands on the desk. She had prepared for this. She had notes. She had observations. She had planned to be measured, professional, calm. But then she looked at him, really looked, and something in the way he was watching her made her put the notes aside. "Mr. Kang," she said, "your son is terrified of something at home, and I will not stop until I find out what." The room went absolutely silent. Kang Do-hyun did not move. He did not blink. He did not reach across the desk or raise his voice or do any of the things a dangerous man might do when a 26-year-old woman looked him in the eye and said something no one had said to him in 15 years. He froze. Not from anger, not from threat assessment, from something far more disorienting than either of those things. She meant it. He could hear it not just in her words but in the complete absence of performance behind them. There was no strategy in her voice, no fear dressed up as confidence. She was simply telling him the truth because the truth was the only thing she had brought into this room. He had been spoken to by politicians, by rival bosses, by lawyers, by men who chose their words like they were diffusing something. He had heard every variation of careful language designed to manage him. He had never heard this. "She loves your son," something in the back of his mind said quietly, "and she doesn't even know him yet." He let out a slow breath. "What kind of fear?" he said. His voice was low, accented, controlled. Amara held his gaze. The kind that doesn't come from school. He flinches at loud sounds. He watches the front entrance every morning. He doesn't finish his food even though I can tell someone packs it with care. He's retreated entirely from his classmates, from me, from everything. She paused. And 3 weeks ago, he was one of the most engaged children in this class. Something moved across Kang's face, fast, gone before she could name it. "He is adjusting," Kang said. "To what?" A pause. "Our circumstances have changed recently." "Mr. Kang." Her voice was quiet, but it did not bend. "I'm not asking for information that isn't mine to have. I am telling you what I see in your son every single day. And what I see worries me enough to sit across from a man I don't know and say it plainly." She looked at him steadily. "Minyi deserves to feel safe. Whatever is happening around him, he needs to know that his world is not going to collapse." Kang looked at her for a long moment. Then he looked at the drawing on the desk. The stick figure outside the house, standing at the edge. His jaw tightened once, just once. "He drew that?" Kang asked. "Last Monday," Amara said softly. The silence that followed was different from the first one. This one had weight. Before we go any further into this story, the Velvet Empire family wants to pause for just a moment. Because what you just witnessed between these two people, that moment of unexpected vulnerability in a room full of children's drawings, it reminded us of something important. There are people in your life right now who are standing at the edge, just like Minyi in that drawing. Maybe it's someone you love. Maybe, quietly, it's you. And so, before we continue, we want to speak something over you. May you be surrounded by people who see you, truly see you, the way Amara saw that child. May your home be a place of peace, not performance. May your health be restored in every place it has been quietly breaking down. May your finances stabilize and grow beyond what worry has allowed you to imagine. May your children and your grandchildren be protected from every hidden danger that surrounds them. May the decisions in front of you be met with wisdom that surprises even you. May every wound you carry in silence begin, slowly, to heal. May your life be long, dignified, and full of moments that remind you why you kept going. If that blessing landed somewhere real for you today, type Amen in the comments. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please do. It's the simplest way to tell us to keep these stories coming. The Velvet Empire family grows one heart at a time. Now back to the room, back to the drawing, back to the man who had not looked away from it. Kang reached out and picked up the drawing. He held it carefully, the same way Amara noticed, that you hold something you're afraid of damaging further. "His mother died 14 months ago," he said. He didn't look up from the paper. "He does not speak of it. I do not force him." Amara was quiet. "I thought time," he stopped, started again. "I thought consistency would be enough." "Consistency helps," Amara said carefully. "But grief needs space to exist. If Minyi has never been given permission to fall apart, he's been holding it alone." Kang set the drawing down. He looked at her with an expression she couldn't fully read. It sat somewhere between gratitude and something almost like pain. "What would you recommend?" he said. Not a question, an opening. "A counselor if he's open to it. Continued routine." And she hesitated. "More time with you, present time, not managed time, just being in the same room without an agenda." Something shifted behind his eyes. You make it sound simple. I know it isn't. He stood, smoothed his coat, looked around the room one final time, the drawings, the alphabet border, the small chaotic evidence of children existing loudly and freely, and then looked back at her. You are very young to speak this directly to people, he said, not unkindly. Someone has to, she said. He almost smiled. The corner of his mouth moved barely, and then it was gone. I will consider what you've said, Ms. Diallo. He left. Amara sat for a long time after the door closed. She couldn't explain the feeling in the room, only that it felt charged, the way air feels after lightning, like something had passed through. She didn't know that two of the men who had driven Kang to the school were waiting outside in an unmarked car. She didn't know that when he got in, they didn't speak, because they had learned long ago that when their boss wore that particular expression, silence was the only safe response. She didn't know any of it. But what happened next changed everything. Minyi came to school the next Monday, and for the first time in weeks, he finished his lunch. He didn't speak much, but he sat differently, less curled in, less braced. At the end of the day, as Amara was wiping the board, he stood at her desk and placed something on it. A new drawing, a house again, the same tree. But this time the stick figure was inside, standing at the window, looking out. Amara stared at it for a long time. She was still thinking about it Wednesday evening, when there was a knock at her apartment door. She wasn't expecting anyone. She looked through the peephole and felt every muscle in her body go still. Kang Do-hyun was standing in the hallway of her building. She opened the door slowly. How do you know where I live? I needed to speak with you outside of the school, he said. His voice was the same, measured, low, careful, but something beneath it was different tonight. That's not an answer. No, he agreed. It isn't. He looked at her. May I come in? Every rational thought she had said no, but rational thought had been losing ground to instinct all week, and her instinct was looking at his face and seeing something that wasn't threat. It was closer to urgency. She stepped back. He walked in, stood in the center of her small living room and looked around the way he had looked around her classroom, absorbing, assessing, books everywhere, a half-eaten plate of food on the coffee table, papers spread across the floor. I owe you an honesty, he said. You owe me an explanation of how you know where I live. Both, he said, the first one first. She crossed her arms. Go ahead. My name is not simply Kang Do-hyun the parent. He said it without theatrics, without menace, just the plain weight of truth. The neighborhood your school sits in, the businesses on that street, the building 2 blocks east, the logistics that run through this part of the city, I control them. Amara did not move. I am telling you this, he continued, because you deserve to know the kind of world Minyi is growing up inside, and because, he stopped, looked away briefly, because I have been asking myself since Thursday what kind of man builds an empire and cannot give his own son permission to grieve. The silence in the apartment was thick and full. Why are you telling me this? She asked quietly. Because you will find out anyway, he said. Someone will tell you, or you will notice something you cannot explain and you will look deeper because that is what you do. He looked at her directly. I would rather you hear it from me. Amara uncrossed her arms slowly. And what exactly are you expecting from me now? Silence, cooperation. Nothing, he said it simply. I am not here to manage you, Ms. Diallo. I am here because my son drew himself back inside the house this week, and you did that, and I don't know how to thank someone for something that large. She stared at him. So I told you the truth instead, he said. It was the only thing I had that felt equal to what you gave him. She sat down slowly on the arm of her sofa. Her mind was moving fast, sorting through everything, the implications, the danger, what it meant for Minyi, what it meant for her school, what it meant that this man was standing in her living room looking at her like She was the most confusing thing he had ever encountered. "You need to understand something," she said finally. "I don't care who you are outside of that school. When Minyi walks through my door every morning, he is my student. Not your son first, my student first. Whatever you run, whatever you control, that stops at my classroom door." He looked at her for a long moment. "That boundary has never been set with me before. I'm setting it now." Another long pause, and then unmistakably he nodded. Understood. She should have left it there. She should have asked him to leave, filed a report, called someone. Done something procedural and safe. She knew that. Every professional instinct she had was screaming it. But Minyi had put the figure back inside the house. "There's a counselor I want Minyi to see," she said. "Dr. Ren Park. She works with children who have experienced loss. She's good. She's discreet." She looked at him steadily. "I need you to make that happen, not suggest it. Make it happen." Something in Kang's posture changed, not submission, not quite, but a kind of recalibration. He was not used to being given directives. It was written all over him. "I will arrange it," he said. "This week." "This week," he confirmed. She stood. "Then I think we're done for tonight." He moved toward the door, stopped with his hand on the frame. "Ms. Diallo." "Yes." "Are you afraid of me?" She thought about it honestly. "I'm cautious of you," she said. "That's different." He nodded slowly. "That is the most fair thing anyone has said to me in a very long time." He left. And Amara stood in the middle of her living room for a long time, heart loud in her chest, knowing that something had just begun that she did not entirely have the power to stop. The weeks that followed moved strangely. Minyi started sessions with Dr. Ren Park on a Thursday afternoon. By the second session, he had started talking. Small things first, what he liked to eat, a cartoon he watched. Then bigger things. His mother's hands, the smell of her coat. Amara heard this from Dr. Park carefully, within professional boundaries. She sat with it quietly, let it mean what it meant. Kang appeared at the school gate one afternoon, not inside, just at the gate, and watched the children pour out at the end of the day. He was in a plain jacket, no entourage, no car waiting. He watched Minyi run toward him, and the way he caught the boy, both arms, full, unhesitating, told Amara everything she needed to know about who this man was underneath what he had built. She watched from the doorway. He looked up and saw her. He didn't wave. She didn't wave. But something passed between them across that distance, acknowledgement maybe, or the beginning of something that didn't have a name yet. And then one of his lieutenants, a man named Ryu, saw it too. Ryu had been with Kang for 11 years. He was loyal the way wolves are loyal, completely and dangerously. He had watched his boss change in recent weeks, softer at the edges, distracted during meetings, asking questions about the school, about the neighborhood, about the teacher. It made Ryu nervous. A distracted boss was a vulnerable boss. A vulnerable boss was a problem for everyone who depended on him. He made a decision without telling Kang. He sent 2 men to the school on a Tuesday morning, not to harm anyone, just to deliver a message. A quiet one, wrapped in politeness, sharp underneath. They found Amara in the hallway before classes started. "Mr. Kang's interests are complicated," one of them said, smiling in the way that is not a smile. It would be better for everyone if the teacher-parent relationship stayed exactly that. Amara looked at both of them. Her pulse was hammering. Her face was completely still. "Get out of my school," she said, "right now." They left. She turned around, walked to the nearest bathroom, ran cold water over her wrists and breathed for 60 seconds. Then she walked back out and taught first period like nothing had happened. That evening, she called the only number she had for Kang. He answered on the second ring. She told him exactly what happened. The silence on the other end of the line was the most frightening kind, completely still, completely cold. "Are you safe?" he said. "Yes, but I need you to understand." I understand, he said. It will not happen again. Kang, she said his name without the title for the first time. If this world comes into my school again, I don't care about the consequences for me. I will involve every authority available to me. Do you understand? Yes. And I need to know Minyi is safe. He is with me, he is safe. Keep him that way. She hung up. What she didn't hear was what happened next, Kang calling Ryu into his office, the door closing, the conversation that followed. She didn't hear Ryu's justifications or the moment Kang's composure finally cracked. A controlled, devastating crack, like a wall that has been under pressure for years suddenly showing its fracture. She is a teacher, Kang said quietly. She is the reason my son drew himself back inside the house, and you put your men in front of her. Ryu started to speak. You do not touch her world, Kang said. You do not look at it. You do not breathe near it if I find out otherwise. He stopped. Let the sentence be finished by everything Ryu already knew. We are clear. We are clear, Ryu said. But Ryu was not clear. He was calculating, and calculated men are the most dangerous kind. 3 days later, Amara received an anonymous document in her school email. No sender, no context, just a file, financial records, property ownership chains, names connected to businesses across the neighborhood. Evidence, if someone knew how to read it, of exactly what Kang Do-hyun controlled and how. She sat in her empty classroom at 6 in the evening and read it 3 times. Someone wanted her to act, to report it, to use it. She thought about Minyi. She thought about the drawing, the stick figure at the edge, then back inside the window. She thought about a boy who had just started saying his mother's name out loud again. She closed the file. She called Kang. Someone sent me a document, she said, about you. A pause. What kind of document? The kind someone sends when they want a problem to disappear without getting their own hands dirty. She could hear him processing it. Ryu, he said almost to himself. Then to her, what did you do with it? I'm telling you about it, she said. That's what I did with it. The silence on his end was long. She could hear him breathing, slowly, controlled. Ms. Diallo, his voice was different this time. The control was still there, but underneath it, something had given way. Why? Because Minyi has therapy tomorrow morning, she said, and I need his father to be present when it ends. She heard him exhale. Why? He said again, softer this time. He wasn't asking about the document anymore. Because some things matter more than being safe, she said. And I decided you were one of the people trying to do something right, even inside all the wrong. She paused. Don't make me regret it. She hung up again. The climax came on a Friday. Ryu moved faster than either of them anticipated. He contacted a rival faction, offered them information on Kang's operations in exchange for a disruption significant enough to destabilize Kang's hold on the territory. He calculated that a weakened Kang would return to instinct, to survival mode, away from schoolteachers and drawings and grief counselors. What he did not calculate was Minyi. The boy was at school when it happened. A confrontation outside one of Kang's businesses, 3 blocks from the school. Controlled, professional, the kind of thing that leaves no obvious evidence. But it sent a signal. Every person in Kang's circle received that signal at the same time. Kang was at a meeting across the city. He felt his phone vibrate, looked at the message, stood up from the table without explanation and walked out. He called Amara. Is Minyi in school right now? The tone of his voice bypassed every professional boundary she had carefully maintained. Yes, he's in class. What's happening? Keep him there. Do not let him leave the building. I am coming. Kang, tell me what's happening. Something I should have resolved weeks ago. A pause. Keep him inside, please. She had never heard him say please before. She went to Minyi's classroom, sat down beside him at his desk. She didn't explain. She just stayed there helping him with his worksheet, laughing quietly at something he said, making the room feel normal. The whole time her pulse was loud and her hands were steady. 20 minutes later, Kang arrived at the school. He came alone. No car, no jacket. He walked through the front entrance and the receptionist, who was about to challenge him, looked at his face and said nothing. Amara met him in the hallway outside Minyi's classroom. He stopped when he saw her. His composure was intact, but it was costing him visibly. She could see it in the set of his jaw, in the way he stood like a man who had been running and had forced himself to slow down before he arrived. "He's fine," she said immediately. "He's in class. He doesn't know anything happened." Kang exhaled, long, slow, full. "Ryu?" she asked quietly. "Ryu is no longer a concern," he said. His voice was flat. She didn't ask what that meant. They stood in the hallway for a moment, the colored alphabet border on the wall, the distant sound of a class laughing behind a closed door, the smell of chalk and old carpet. "This can't keep happening," she said. "Minyi can't live like this." "No," he agreed, "he can't." "So what are you going to do?" He looked at her. In the fluorescent light of the school hallway, stripped of his usual surroundings, Kang Do-hyun looked like what he actually was, a man in his 40s who had spent half his life building something that was slowly consuming the only thing he had left to protect. "I don't know yet," he said. It was the most honest thing she had ever heard him say. She nodded slowly. "Then figure it out, and until you do," she glanced at Minyi's classroom door. "He stays safe. That is non-negotiable." "Agreed." "And Kang?" He looked at her. "Whatever you decide, make sure it's actually for him, not for you, not for the Empire, for him." He held her gaze for a long, still moment. And then he nodded, not the nod of a man managing a situation, but the nod of someone who has just been handed the one truth they cannot argue with. He went into Minyi's classroom. Amara watched through the small window in the door. She saw the boy look up, saw the moment Minyi registered his father standing there, and the way his whole body changed, the careful armor dropping instantly, the way children dissolve when the one person they need most simply shows up without being asked. She walked away before she started crying in a school hallway. The weeks that followed were quiet in the way that things are quiet after a storm has passed through and rearranged everything. Kang began a process, slow, careful, legally intricate, of distancing himself from the operations that put his son most at risk. It was not an exit. It was a renegotiation of terms with a world he had built and could not simply walk out of. But he showed up to every one of Minyi's therapy sessions. And Minyi, by the end of the school term, had made 2 friends. Amara kept teaching. She kept her classroom exactly as it was, the drawings, the alphabet border, the small wobbly chair. She did not file any reports. She did not reach out again unless Minyi needed something. She held the line she had drawn, and she held it firmly. But on the last day of term, there was a knock at her classroom door after the children had gone home. Kang stood in the doorway holding a small envelope. She raised an eyebrow. "It's from Minyi," he said. "He made me promise to deliver it myself." She opened it. Inside was a drawing, a house, a tree, 2 stick figures outside, one small, one tall, standing together in front of the door, not at the edge, not at the window. At the door together, about to go in. She looked up. Kang was watching her with an expression she finally had a name for. Gratitude, pure, uncomplicated, and enormous. "Thank you," he said, "for not walking away when walking away would have been easier." She folded the drawing carefully. "Minyi didn't give me a choice," she said. "He never did." Kang nodded once, turned to leave. "Kang." He stopped. "The figure in the drawing," she said. "The tall one, is that you?" He was quiet for a moment. "I hope so," he said. And then he was gone. Amara sat in her empty classroom as the late afternoon light came through the windows. She set the drawing on her desk. Outside, she could hear the streets settling into evening, the city moving, indifferent, continuous. She thought about a man who controlled a neighborhood but couldn't control his own grief. She thought about a boy who had drawn himself outside the house and then slowly, step by step, drawn himself back in. She thought about the line between caution and compassion and how many times she had stood on it, swaying. Some choices don't feel like choices at the time. They feel like inevitabilities, like the only possible response to a truth that is standing right in front of you demanding to be acknowledged. Amara had looked at Minyi and seen a child who needed someone to refuse to give up. And somehow, in refusing to give up on the boy, she had refused to give up on the man who was failing him without meaning to. Was she right to do it? That is the question this story leaves behind. Was Amara justified in choosing compassion over procedure, in closing that file, in making that call, in staying? Or did her choices put herself and others in a danger that no child's drawing could justify? And if you had been standing in that hallway, looking through that small window at a father and his son, would you have walked away? Or would you have stayed too? Let us know in the comments. We read every single one. And if this story moved something in you tonight, please leave a like. It tells us to keep going. Subscribe to the Velvet Empire family if you haven't yet. There are more stories waiting, deeper ones that will sit with you long after you've closed the screen. You are why we tell them. And sometimes, the ending we fear the most becomes the beginning we needed.